Hi, welcome to SoCal Insider. I'm David Nazar in for Rick Reef. If you've suffered a medical emergency or are badly in need of help, does it really matter what ambulance or which emergency responder rushes you to the hospital? Well, it does to the city of Los Angeles. One Jewish ambulance service in LA says it's being squeezed out by city officials and the fire department. Also, I'm telling you, you are not going to want to miss the interview I have with a Southern California investigative news reporter. You wonder how the Palestinians and Israelis are going to coexist in the Middle East? Well, this reporter explains how he coexists with his Palestinian Muslim father and Israeli Jewish mother in Orange County. Now that's a peace process. But first, it's graduation week for about 30,000 high school seniors across Los Angeles. And while this joyous occasion is typically the start of a new life for most, the celebration for about 100 of these students is tempered with complications because for them, instead of worrying about which college they're going to spend their next 4 years at, they sometimes have to be more concerned with where they're going to spend their next night. There are more than 250,000 homeless folks in Los Angeles County. That's the largest population of any metropolitan area in the country. Most of the county's homeless are found in downtown LA, like out here on Skid Row. Set against the backdrop of the city's towering downtown skyline sits one of Los Angeles Unified School District's many high schools, and a towering problem facing LAUSD. Graduating senior Nora Perez is part of this problem as she fights an uphill battle every day. Nora is one of the nearly 15,000 homeless students in the district. Sadly, there are hundreds, if not thousands more, who are unidentified at LAUSD. For Nora, her life deteriorated quickly. Nora's father lost his job when she was a freshman. Her family was kicked out of their house. From there, she was shuttled all over the city, sometimes living on the street over the last 4 years, mostly in the back of a car or truck she called home. This was Nora's living room and bedroom. This was where she did her homework each day.
At that point, I thought everything was falling apart completely. That I was losing everything that I had with me. It was just too much pain at that point, and I felt like giving up.
Nora says she battled loneliness, isolation, and shame. She says she didn't want to tell any of her friends and classmates for fear they'd find out she was homeless.
You don't have your own room, you don't have your own bed, you don't even know where to shower. And it was really difficult. It was really difficult, and it brings tears to my eye because going through all this pain, going through all those moments, all those cold nights, that I looked at my parents and saw their pain in their face.
That pain motivated Nora to look for help within the school district, and she found it. That's because LAUSD has a special homeless education program designed to provide assistance to homeless students and their families. It's part of a nationwide effort through the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, which is part of No Child Left Behind, passed in the late 1990s and reauthorized in 2002. McKinney-Vento ensures that our nation's students who are homeless get a chance at an education just like any other student with the same opportunities to succeed academically. Nancy Gutierrez is a coordinator of LAUSD's homeless education program. You can often find Gutierrez out here on Skid Row, working with various organizations in the area, providing help to kids all over LA County. And that's a daunting task, given the school district's huge geographic region, which spans 200 square miles and almost 700,000 students in total. Another challenge is the fact that the majority of those students are Hispanic. Same for the homeless students. This dynamic complicates matters for the district, which oftentimes has to deal with a language barrier from families within the Latino community or homeless youth who are undocumented, like Nora, and fear being deported. Yet when they're struggling to just survive, those obstacles can seem minor at times.
Some of the barriers that our students experience range from the minimal to not having school supplies, the basic needs that these students don't have. They sometimes don't even have a toothbrush, toothpaste, a washcloth to wash themselves. Some of them are living in cars, and giving them just a basic backpack with notebook and paper to be able to do their schoolwork just like any other student. Also sometimes not being able to get to school. They may not be in a regular home situation, at a shelter far away from their school. So we help them with transportation services to get to and from school.
In addition to the bus passes, school supplies, and basic staples, the program also gives homeless students things like clothes, shoes, team uniforms, and more. Housing is the one thing LA Unified cannot provide. In Los Angeles, there is a tremendous shortage of affordable or low-income housing, the major contributor to homelessness here. Each year, LAUSD, like school districts all across the country, sets aside specific dollars for student homeless programs generated from federal funding under what's called Title I. This past year, Los Angeles Unified dedicated about $1 million for their program. However, Gutierrez explains that's not nearly enough money to provide for the district's homeless students.
LAUSD and many districts nationwide are faced with budgetary issues, and we're unable to get the resources that we need. So that's also why our component of working with the community is really crucial. We have formed partnerships with the City of Los Angeles to have matching funds, and we work with independent organizations, even banks and individuals in the community to have grants and sponsorships so that we can make sure we get also private funds so that we can provide all of the services necessary. Because as you can imagine, even just providing a backpack to 15,000 students is a huge cost.
One of the organizations LAUSD partners with is School on Wheels on Skid Row. School on Wheels is a nonprofit learning center in downtown LA, which provides tutoring and mentoring to kids in kindergarten through 12th grade. The organization has nearly 2,000 volunteers who are the heart and soul of this project, volunteers who travel to motels, shelters, or just cars on the street in some of the worst LA neighborhoods to help children.
Our goal is to find the gaps in the education of homeless students and fill in those gaps, help those students catch up. It's difficult because every time there's a new student that we match up with a volunteer tutor and we see what we can do for those students and we see them succeed in school, there's another family right behind them that needs our help. And that's what we've been seeing over the years, is just a constant, steady increase in the number of homeless families, and that makes our work that much more challenging.
Dr. Deborah Duardo knows of these challenges. Dr. Duardo is the executive director of LAUSD's Student Health and Human Services Department. Duardo helps oversee 14 LA Unified Wellness Centers throughout the city. The centers partner with the Homeless Education Program to provide medical services and mental health help.
Homeless students and families have a lot of instability in their lives, and it's very difficult for them to access services that they need. Basic services such as health care are one of the services that students need to have in order to be successful in school.
Dr. Duardo says the homeless kids she sees have a wide array of health issues, everything from depression and drug abuse to asthma and vision problems. However, the bigger problem is just trying to get the students here in the first place.
The first thing that they have to deal with is the stigma of being homeless. So oftentimes children don't want to share that information. We don't always know which of our students are homeless because they aren't always forthcoming with that information. There's a big stigma, they're embarrassed, they feel humiliated, and so even if they need services or there's access to services, sometimes we don't know about it if they're not willing to share that information.
Fortunately for Nora, she was willing to share her information. Nora is now one of 100 homeless students graduating this week at the Los Angeles Unified School District, graduating from a district that has one of the highest homeless student graduation rates in the country.
When every time I try to give up, I think about it, and I'm like, you know what, no, I'm not gonna give up. Now that I accomplished so many things, I'm not gonna give up.
That high school you saw there in the story is Roybal Learning Center. Now, Nora told me she eventually wants to apply to college if possible. Of course, right now it's difficult with her undocumented status, and she wants to be, of all things, an FBI agent. If you want to help out the homeless students of LAUSD, whether it's simply volunteering or giving donations, or you just want more information, the website is homelesseducation.lausd.net. Again, that's homelesseducation.lausd.net. Well, if you live anywhere in the West LA area, particularly the Fairfax district, somewhere near Olympic or Robertson, Pico and La Cienega, you know the area, you no doubt used to see those ambulances with a Hebrew writing on them driving around town. They're the all-volunteer, donation-funded organization Hatzolah, which responds to medical emergencies primarily in LA's Jewish communities. Well, Hatzolah has been in a battle with the city of Los Angeles. I'm joined now by Lindsey Mastis, a correspondent with our partners at Feature Story News. Lindsey, you've been following the story. What's going on here?
David, the city of Los Angeles has ordered Hatzolah to stop transporting patients in their ambulances, in essence, to make way for the LA Fire Department. This at a time when the LAFD is facing so many problems of its own. Trained EMTs with Hatzolah have been responding to medical emergencies. However, now they're not allowed to take patients to the hospital. Hatzolah says this is putting sick people at risk because they have to wait for a city ambulance to show up. Hatzolah has been under fire from the city for about a year.
There are 70 volunteer EMTs that respond to medical emergencies in 3 different Jewish communities. They don't get paid, and their patients, whether they're Jewish or not, are never charged, not 1 cent. And that's part of the problem.
The city requires that we charge for services in order to be an ambulance service.
But Benjamin Geiger of Hatzolah says if they charge, they wouldn't be allowed to respond to emergencies at all. It's a catch-22. And last year,
we received essentially a request from the city to cease and desist, to stop transporting our patients.
Since then, Hatzolah has been storing their ambulances, including in the parking lot of this mortuary. They're worried that if they're not able to transport people to the hospital, some of their patients could end up at mortuaries as well.
There have been cases where the paramedics are further from us than we are from the hospital, and we're stuck just waiting for the paramedics to come.
It creates a situation with safety.
Frank Lima, president of United Firefighters of Los Angeles City, says Hatzolah is putting people at risk because it isn't licensed the same way the fire department is, and it could lead to competition from commercial ambulance companies, taking away resources and jeopardizing lives.
Our job here at United Firefighters of Los Angeles City is to protect the city, protect the fiscal integrity of the city, to make sure that our recoverable $70 million that we get annually in ground emergency medical transportation, it stays exclusively ours. We don't want to erode our rights, so we have we have ambulance services coming in from all over to bid to take our jobs.
But Los Angeles City Councilman Paul Koretz believes Hatzolah should be allowed to operate within city limits.
When you get there a couple of minutes early, because you are on the spot right there as a volunteer, and you're trained, a couple minutes of CPR to get things started and then hand it over to the fire department, that could save a life many times over in the city. And I don't think we should miss that opportunity.
An ideal situation that would save face for everyone would be to create a carve-out that would allow an all-volunteer organization such as Hatzolah to exist without threatening the fire department. And that's why
David Bacall with Hatzolah says until then, the organization itself is at risk. He's worried the city will limit them further.
We could be shut down.
This is being dragged out, and neither side seems to be backing down. David?
Okay, look, so as an outside observer, it seems only natural. Obviously, the fire union is concerned about competition. So in that case, Linz, they may have a valid point. What I want to know is Hatzolah affecting the city's business? So as an example, how many emergency calls is Hatzolah taking away from the fire department?
Well, David, Hatzolah says they're not trying to encroach on anyone's business. The organization always calls the fire dispatch and lets them know when there's an emergency first. According to LA Mayor Eric Garcetti's office, the fire department, on average, responds to about 900 medical emergencies per day. Hatzolah tells me their organization responds to only about 700 in a year. That's less than 0.5%.
Yeah, hearing that Hatzolah is not encroaching on anyone. But let's be honest, with this, aren't emergency responders with LA Fire Department better trained than, say, these Hatzolah folks, for example?
Hatzolah says all their EMTs receive training that exceeds state regulations, but the fire department employs paramedics so they can respond to all emergency calls, whereas Hatzolah can only provide basic life support.
Okay, finally, you did say earlier, basically both sides are in a stalemate, so to speak. So obviously, what's next for Hatzolah?
David, Hatzolah does not plan to sue. They told me that they don't want to turn this into a legal battle. What they're trying to do right now is educate local and state lawmakers about the organization. They're currently working with lobbyists to try and get that message out.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Well, if you read the investigative news website Voice of OC, you know the name Adam Elmahrek, or at least his news reports. He's covered everything from the chaos with the police and city officials in Anaheim to the madness over at the Great Park in Irvine. Well, when he told me his mom was an Israeli Jew and his dad was a Palestinian Muslim, I had to interview this guy. Joining me now, the half Jew, half Muslim, half Arab, half Israeli, Adam Elmahrek. How are you?
Nice to be here, David.
So, I don't know what you are. What are you?
Well, that's a good question. I consider myself first and foremost an American, and also a combination of cultures. Like you said, my mother's Jewish, my father's Muslim. You know, my mom at times read the Old Testament to us on Saturdays. You know, we went to the mosque on Sundays. So I feel like I'm a true combination of cultures. But as I waded through that complex identity fog, I guess you could call it, I really found solace in the idea that we're all created equal, that idea that we were taught in school as part of the Declaration of Independence that really was a beacon of light.
I find this so fascinating because you look at it, I mean, they can't get their act together in the Middle East. The strife going on between Israel and the Palestinian territories, or Palestine as it's called, is off the charts. Briefly tell me what it was like in your family, and also, do you feel a kinship more to your Israeli Jewish side or to your Palestinian Muslim side?
I feel two halves, as you know, two equal halves is really what I feel. I mean, that's a rough question. That's like saying, who do you love more, your mother or your father, right? So, you know, my family back in Israel, both sides are just absolutely wonderful. My Israeli family, my Jewish family, they're probably a little more Western. You know, some of them proudly eat pork. They're not as religious as you might think, being a country of all, you know, or a Jewish country. My Palestinian family is a little more traditional. There's been kind of an Islamic revival in the Palestinian territories and even among some of the Israeli Arabs.
When you see the news going on of all the fighting going on in the West Bank, Gaza, Israel with the new settlements, are there arguments in your home? Do you folks look at it objectively? Do you appreciate both sides? How does that dynamic play out?
You know, it's probably the issue that has dominated table conversation at dinner for my entire life. It's an issue I've been have intimate knowledge of ever since I was a child. And so I think we do take a whole look at it objectively. I feel like my father, having married a Jewish person, is somebody who looks at the situation objectively, who looks at people on an individual level, that this is somebody, you know, I can fall in love with. This is somebody I can be friends with, and my mother looks at it as the same way.
When your parents got married some 30 years ago, did the Palestinian side say, "Why are you marrying a Jew?" Did the Jewish side say, "Why are you marrying a Muslim?" I mean, was there any kind of strife with that?
That's a good question. I think that there probably was, and from what I have heard, there may have been a little strife. That is the kind of question I'm saving actually for a journalism project I have in my own grand plans for my career. So I'll be exploring that question at some point in the future.
The reason why I find it so interesting to speak with you, and I could talk to you for days because I find the whole Middle Eastern situation fascinating. If you can coexist in your house and your mom and dad are so happily married after all these years, what is going on in the Middle East? In the 90s, we saw Clinton with Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin. We've seen Joe Biden. Now we see John Kerry with Bibi Netanyahu, yet nothing is getting done. How do you see the situation in the Middle East?
I feel that we've really been debating the wrong question, and that is the fundamental problem plaguing the Israeli-Palestine issue. I feel that the question is not a two-state solution, but really this is one state, it's one country, two peoples live there, and both peoples should have equal rights and equal citizenship under the law.
Yet when there is so much hatred, there is so much division between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and a lot of it has to do with the governments, a lot of the people and the populace, they integrate and they assimilate very well. But when you have this built-in hatred, how are you going to coexist in one country when the Israelis are so fearful for their lives and the Palestinians are in an uproar over the fact that they feel the government is just bombarding them?
Yeah. Well, look, this is an issue that has spanned generations. I mean, the Jewish immigration to Israel began in the late 19th century. So this is not a problem that's going to go away with this generation or maybe even the next. But I feel that over generations, people change, attitudes change, and that's probably what's going to happen in the Israel-Palestine area. I mean, people are going to change. A transformative figure might come along and say, we need to get along. We're equal people here. We should all be treating each other with kindness and compassion, and we should all have equal rights.
What, though, is going to be the motivation to get something done? I mean, I hate to say it because when I was younger, I always believed there would be peace in the Middle East. Nothing would make me happier than to see Israelis feel safe, Palestinians have a place to live, and the two sides coexist. I believe it's going to be Armageddon and a third world war there just because of the hatred and the divisiveness. What is going to be the motivating factor to get peace going?
Well, I have personal experience to the contrary. I mean, look at my parents. I mean, they not only managed to get along, but build a house together, build a family together, a whole life. So to say and to generalize that the Palestinians and the Jews forever are going to hate each other, I think it's a lack of faith in the spirit of these people. And so I think that over the generations, you're going to see attitudes change. A compromise can be had. There can be security for the Jews in that country. There can be, a security pact, something that gives them the promise of a Zionist state.
That's important then, compromise. What compromise do you see needs to be done on the Israeli side with, let's say, Benjamin Netanyahu? What compromise needs to be done on the Palestinian side with, say, Mahmoud Abbas?
Well, first, I think we really need to change the question at hand. The question at hand, the two-state idea, I just don't think it's going to work. You've got hundreds of thousands of Jews living in the West Bank, a disputed territory that's supposed to be the subject of trade in a peace negotiation. Obviously, what are you going to do with those people? A whole population transfer? You can't do that. So you have to realize at some point that these settlements are going to keep expanding, and you're going to have a situation where you have one country with two peoples, and that's going to be unavoidable. So you have to come to a compromise. You have to come to citizenship for all.
In the immediate, where is leadership failing, whether it's on the U.S. side, the Israeli side, or the Palestinian side?
I think leadership has been failing on all sides. I mean, the Palestinian leadership has certainly been failing. There's been corruption over the decades. The people don't have faith in much of their government. You know, on the Israeli side, there's also been failings. There's been lack of compromise on all sides. On the American side, I mean, I think that the last visit by John Kerry was seen by many as just a complete joke, that this is not going to happen. The peace process itself, based on a two-state solution, is absolutely discredited at this point.
When you tell people you are half Israeli Jewish, half Palestinian Muslim, what is the response you get? I mean, obviously, I found it fascinating, but what do other folks tell you?
Well, most folks actually ask similar questions to you as you. So, you know, how was it growing up? How are the dinner table conversations? And then, obviously, what are your views on the Israel-Palestine issue?
The last time you went back to Israel, because again, the governments, the respective governments, are different than the people. What did you feel was the sentiment of the people, both in Israel and on the Palestinian side?
That's a good question. The Israelis, I feel, are, and with good reason, living in a certain kind of climate of fear. And that's really unfortunate. It's, you know, the Jews came to Israel seeking a state of their own because they wanted security guarantees. They wanted their own army to be able to protect their people and never again have what happened in the Holocaust. That was the dream of Israel, and that has not been fully realized because of that.
Well, let's hope we can realize that Israel and Palestine can be like your mom and your dad and coexist very well.
I believe it can.
Thank you. You can watch this show and past shows at rickreef.com. Segments of the show can be viewed also at pbssocal.org. My guests have been Lindsey Mastis and Adam Elmahrek. And a special thanks to all the folks at LA Unified. And of course, thank you for watching. We'll see you again on SoCal Insider.
SoCal Insider with Rick Reef is brought to you by the following. 5 Point Communities is a proud sponsor of PBS SoCal. 5 Point Communities is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. More information available at www.fivepointcommunities.com. Snell & Wilmer is a full-service business law firm with more than 400 attorneys in Orange County, Los Angeles, and throughout the West. On the web at swlaw.com. Snell & Wilmer. Straight talk, sound counsel. Practical solutions.
Relief Pod's latest generation of safety kits now go everywhere you go. Relief Pod's organized, color-coded, and compact safety kits keep first aid and emergency items accessible for a safe lifestyle every day. Relief Pod. Live ready.
A healthy future for you, your family, and your business is why Memorial Care Health System transformed healthcare. Our hospitals, physicians, and outpatient centers keep patients healthy and care for them when they're not. Memorial Care, one healthcare system leading the way.
The nice thing about City National for me is that they've been the same from the time I started my business to the time I sold my business. And the most important thing I think you can decide is who you're going to choose to protect and to help me to run my business better. City National is